Let's start. My name is Bruce, and Brian and I met a number of years ago in a Thai massage course. And
give people the context.
So it goes back, and I've used Brian as a resource for referencing my health and issues and so on, and we've just become very good friends. So thank you for this.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. No, when we met, I really felt like, okay, this is like me, but just a future version of
way
me.
in the future.
Yeah. But young at heart.
Young at heart.
Right?
So just a little bit of history about me. I just turned 69 years old.
Okay.
My life is more interesting than it's ever been. Haven't been to a doctor in probably 10 years. And my path kind of went down the nutritional road about 10 years ago when my wife was diagnosed with dementia, and I started digging into what affects the brain and so on and so forth, and discovered heavy metals and diet and all of this. And I just kind of kept on that path. So I started drinking green smoothies 10 years ago, and just kind of kept diving in. And here I am at 69, and I feel better than I did when I was 39. So this is really cool, and mental acuity and everything else is there, and I feel very, very blessed. But I also feel that a lot of what we're going to be talking about are things that younger people should pay attention to, so that they don't become sick when they're 50 or 55 and do nothing but kind of deal with health issues and go downhill. There's a quality of life aspect. I don't want to necessarily live forever, but I want to be really healthy until the day I die. And I'm feeling the effects of all of the vitamins and the minerals and the green smoothies and healthy lifestyle, and getting curious about everything there is in life, because there's so much to explore. At my age, I'm having the adventure that I never had when I was a kid. That's what it's like.
Yeah, no, it's been beautiful for me to witness, right? And to see someone who's really doing it, and who's really making the most of these golden years, as they call them, right? Instead of the norm in our culture, which is to sit around and watch TV or golf or whatever. Not anything against TV or golf, but
well, the sad truth is, I was in a men's group a couple of years ago. Thank you, Mantos. And in this men's group, there was very often kind of 20-odd-year-olds, stumbling through life like the rest of us. But the one thread and the theme that I recognized as I spoke with them was that they all somehow, on a subconscious level, expect to become their fathers. And many of these young men, of course, their fathers were either abusers or alcoholics or neglectors, whatever it was. And they observed me at kind of 66 years old at the time, going to ecstatic dance and having all of these interests in life, and they said, "Oh, I don't have to become my father." So that I was really surprised with how deeply ingrained that idea was, and how they kind of woke up to, "Oh, I have choices." So we all have choices that we sometimes don't even realize when we walk through life.
Yeah. Well, and first it's the awareness, right? Bringing awareness to that fact that you are indeed an individual who can do different, right? You don't have to repeat the ways of the past. Don't have to act that stuff out. But then from there, actually making it happen is a whole other story, right? Actually being able to catch yourself when those subconscious patterns are coming in, right? And to observe, right? Create spaciousness and be like, okay, no, I can see this. I can see this reaction. I can see this conditioned response coming up. That's not me necessarily. How do I want to engage? Right? Which is like not easy.
Well,
not easy.
It's just practice, right? Like everything else. Life is all about practice. It's not about any end goal. Not, never mind all the goals and achievements. When I achieve this, I'll be happy. When I get the car, when I get the girl, when I have the house, it's just nonsense. We're taught that it's all about the goal, and in the process we miss the actual being in this process of life, in the adventure, just of being on the path. So it's like learning more about extrapolating more out of this moment and this day and so on and so forth, rather than spending all of my time in some future projection of something that I need to achieve in order to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really just bringing us back to where are we right now and how can I appreciate this moment, just sitting here talking to Brian and really be present.
Yeah.
That's where life really exists, is right here.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a quote from one of my favorite teachers, which is to fall in love with the process.
Yes.
Right? And be process oriented in life. Because then you can never be disappointed, really, right? If you're never attached to some particular outcome, you can never be disappointed. You can never, fail in a sense, right? And be some sort of ultimate failure or whatever the label is.
Yes.
Because you're just present and you're just learning and you're just moving forward day by day, doing as best as you can, and being thankful for just this opportunity, right? That's the thing I always have to bring it back to, is gratitude, right? Just like be present, breathe. Like we've got air to breathe, we've got lungs to breathe the air that we've got.
Yeah.
And bellies to be filled with food and sunshine to feel on our skin and people to meet, and it's just like every day is such a gift when we can recognize it, right? But I think we've all been there. I've definitely been there, in those places where all you can really see and focus on is what you don't yet have.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Which just perpetuates itself.
Or kicking myself for what I should have, could have had.
Yeah, really.
So either spending all of our time in the story loops about the future or the past, but don't really exist.
Yeah. Coming up with all these fantastic, the best comebacks or arguments, or like if I would have just said this, I would have had that person, or whatever the thing is.
So we live our life, and a lot of people live our lives in projections of the past and the future. We're worried about the future, and we kind of sad about what we didn't do or could have accomplished in the past, rather than just kind of being here with this incredible presence that is available to us all. Now, I've been also meditating for 10 years, and through that, and listening to Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle and all of these wonderful teachers who do talk a lot about presence. The practice of meditation, and that can be a different, slightly format for just about anybody, whatever it speaks to you, whether led meditation or walking meditation or sitting, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's still a really worthwhile to get us out of these loops and out of the busyness, and just to kind of come into a space where we just kind of feel a calmness and that we just exist. And then we can carry that through our busy days without getting caught up in all of the messiness around us.
Yeah. Yeah, right. To be in the world but not of the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Not to ride the waves instead of be tossed around, in somewhat of a storm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful journey. It's a beautiful, sort of mission, right? It's like this divine mission that we've woken up to. It's like, whoa, I'm here.
Yes.
This is crazy.
That's right. And there's a richness in life when we're present that wasn't there before. It's only available. This richness is only available when you're really sitting and listening and connecting, rather than kind of wondering about my laundry and the shopping and what I'm doing next week, or if I'm truly present with you. There's a richness in this connection that is available. It is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I found that some of the most powerful tools in accessing that richness have been like the plants, right? Whether it's some cannabis or mushrooms or what have you. All these things that are getting more and more talked about, right? Cannabis is going to be legal next year, which is super exciting. And actually coming up this weekend, I believe it's this weekend, they have the second annual, it's called Mapping the Mind with Mushrooms, I believe is what it's called. It's like the Students for Sensible Drug Policy at U of T are putting on this day-long conference. 8 a.m. they're starting with Ganja Yoga in Queen's Park.
Nice.
And then from there it's just like a whole schedule of workshops, and they've got Dennis McKenna telecalling in, and like how to grow mushrooms and like psychology of mushrooms and all this stuff. Like, this is a mainstream educational institution, right? Which is really inspiring and exciting for me.
Well, this is picking up the research they were doing back in the 60s with psilocybin and LSD and all of this sort of thing. It was becoming, and the results were so profound, helping people with all sorts of disorders, mental conditions, and anxiety, and depression, and PTSD, and they were using MDMA, and they were getting such amazing results that the powerful, I believe, pharma lobby convinced the government that these maybe should, be scheduled as, and made illegal.
Yeah.
Because they were afraid of the competition. These are actually medicines that work when they're used in the right context, and they have amazing things to offer. Ayahuasca has been a profound part of my life, and mushrooms is the same kind of energy, and these are our teachers if we treat them with respect as medicines, not just goof off with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you truly treat it as a medicine, it speaks to you and shows me aspects of myself that I hadn't discovered. Yeah, profound.
Yeah, well, this for me is really exciting because, we're both really interested in men's work, right? In personal evolution and that sort of thing. And so finding spaces, right? Creating spaces for these sort of ancient rituals, right? Rites of passage, initiation, for people to get into, right? That they give context and meaning and direction to our modern lives. And using some of these, tools, some of these teachers, some of these medicines as a gateway.
Yes.
Right? Not many things that really excite me more than that. Like really the vision of seeing a group of men, maybe it's 10, 20, 50, who knows, right? And we're off in the woods somewhere and we're like training together and fasting and eating and, being men, right? And going through these ordeals, going through these rites of passage in order to, step more fully into sovereignty. Right, and getting back to how we started, talking about not having to become the father, right? Just claiming your sovereignty as an individual, as a conscious creator, to choose your own path, right?
There's a lot of lost men, and part of it is rather than have a community of men that we relate to, society has taught us to compete, and especially men against men. It's always. He's got the bigger, better, faster car or whatever it is, and I need to compete with him and compare myself and all of this. And all of these modules that we've been taught in society are actually ways that we get separated from one another. And so this mankind project type of synergy, we're just starting to rediscover that. But I look around and I see a lot of men are just very, very lost. And women as well. I think it's societal, but this is because of all what we've been taught about competition and it's separating. And we need to let that go and stop comparing and honor each individual, all 7.5 billion of us, as unique entities walking through life. We can't compare ourselves to anyone else. I am unique. You are unique. To think that I'm kind of that I can project what's going on in your head or what your judgments are about me and all this sort of nonsense is really, it is nonsense.
Well, yeah, it's slippery territory, right? And I do identify with sort of, the idea of archetypes, right? In the sort of unconscious, right, that we can all tap into and relate to, and in that sense have, similar experiences and similar insights and similar challenges. But it's still coming through the lens of your life experience or of my life experience.
Yes,
right?
it is contextual.
Yeah, so it's always colored in a certain way, right? Which makes it tricky. And I'm just sort of thinking out loud. But in terms of how do you systematize personal transformation, in a sense? Because I feel like if it's going to reach the critical mass or a critical scale, there needs to be protocols and there needs to be, standard operating procedure in a sense that can reliably bring about, shifts in consciousness and shifts in insight, but do so in a way that respects the individual journey, right?
That's right.
Which I'm certain is possible. and is happening currently, you know.
Well, there are more and more men's groups around, and Mankind Project and all these sort of things to really teach men that it's okay to kind of share with other men and to be vulnerable with other men. We don't have to be this big, the warrior. I mean, I learned in Buddhism, about the warrior, and the warrior isn't necessarily the guy with the sword. The true bravery comes when we open our hearts and we can be ourselves and be vulnerable and kind of say, here I am, like me or not. And in that space, then we allow people in, and they respond in kind. That's my take.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's both sides, right? It's both sides. It's like, on one hand, how compassionate, how tender can you be? How soft can you be? Right? How much can you trust in life? And be open and be, courageous, right? Which is like courage. I think it has some Latin root to the heart, or I'm not certain, but courage, something with controlling rage. Anyways,
we'll Google it.
Yeah, well, this courage is corazón. Corazón is heart in Spanish. Anyways, so that's the one side. But the other side is, to be trained and to be strong and to be able to react with decisiveness, right, and force when needed.
Yes.
Right. And it's interesting. I look around at my generation, and we haven't really been in a time where that was needed or called for. It's been like peacetime, at least in North America.
Yes.
Right? And we were speaking earlier during dinner, about how that's changing. That seems to be changing quite quickly. Things are speeding up and things are breaking down.
There are a lot of things changing in the earth right now, yes. Yeah. We're at the peak of a climate cycle, we're at the peak of a financial cycle. It's like everything is coming to a head right now, and this is really kind of feels like some people call it the apocalypse. And but they kind of don't know the real meaning of apocalypse, and what the apocalypse really means is just a cleansing. It's getting rid of all of these horrible energies that don't serve us anymore, so we can have a fresh start.
Yeah, move up a level.
Correct. Yeah, and luckily we have things like the internet these days to kind of have this revolution that is going to kind of a bloodless revolution, and the world is changing, and we can determine our own destiny now. Yeah, so there are many things changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
With probably some rough spots along the way, but coming out the other side, this is our opportunity to really, morph into a different human race.
That's what I'm seeing, right? And that's as much as people can look at the negatives and think, oh, it's all going to shit, or whatever. There's also so much amazing stuff happening.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
People creating things, people being inventive.
Yep.
I know we were talking about cryptocurrency and that whole revolution,
Yes.
which we can dive into a little bit.
Sure.
Share the significance of that.
Yes.
And what a sort of liberating force that is being and can be for more of us.
Yep.
Because corresponding to this whole law of balance, right? This idea, the law of universal balance. You can't have dark without light. You can't have positive without negative, right? So, people like us choose to focus more on the positive and feed that side of things. And so it's affirming, I find it inspiring to see just how many amazing things are happening.
Yeah, but I don't think it's just, like this whole idea that only just focus on the positive is not like that. It's important to have the awareness of what's going on in the world, as dark as it may seem, without actually getting sucked into that dark vortex.
Yeah.
And just observing it and trusting that we're heading to a different place, and knowing that we have the power to change the world.
Well, then there's the whole idea, I find, when you recognize that you're a spirit having a human experience, that really lightens the load in a sense, in that, death is not some ultimate end, right? So it doesn't really, it'll be sad when we pass and when we lose those that we love, and when things change. There's a sadness and a grieving that needs to happen. But it's nothing to fear. right? It's nothing to fear, to be paralyzed by, or any of that stuff, right? It's be aware of the dark, right? Know it, accept it, love it, even dare I say, and then play sort of in the gray, right?
That's good. Getting back to kind of who we are and this whole idea of how, relating and so on. And one thing that I hold is very important is how to learn to be self-loving and self-accepting. You know, because like if I'm going to do this, and I don't really know, love, and accept who I am, this is going to be really difficult because I'm not even showing who I am. This idea of authenticity is really important. But knowing myself, now I know what to be authentic with.
Yeah.
Who am I? Then I can, I know myself, I love myself to some degree, I accept everything that I am and have been. This is just a big learning curve here. Now I love and accept myself. Now I can share that. And when I share that with you, that now you can be encouraged to be in the same place. I'm okay, and I can learn to love myself, and like that. Self-love is why we're here, in my estimation.
Well, it seems like that's the root, right? That's the root. And it goes so deep because, I don't know about you, but I find for myself, you know, there's like layers of it, right?
Yes, many.
Yeah. And, you know, it can be easy in some sense to love and accept certain parts, and then other parts that we think, oh no, well, I can never accept that, right? For whatever reason, maybe we were taught that it's sinful when you were a child, or maybe you were taught that it's wrong or dirty, or whatever bullshit was planted in your, you know, developing brain. That can take a lot of work, a lifetime almost, to overcome, right?
This is ingrained from when we're very young. We're taught to beat up on ourselves and judge ourselves and be shame and guilt and all this. And this whole idea of, you know, you made a mistake, oh my goodness, you know, you should be ashamed of yourself and all of this. Yeah, mistakes are the way we're supposed to learn. You know, we put our hand on the fire. Ooh, I won't do that again. I don't know. I hurt this person. I won't do that again. That doesn't feel good. It's supposed to just be our gauge, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea of sinning itself, if you take that back to the Greek derivation, it actually means to miss the mark, to make a mistake.
Yeah.
But, you know, like through our society and religion and so on and so forth, they've taken that and blown that up as to some way that we should be beating up on ourselves even more.
Yeah.
And this is very sad. So yes, there's a lot of layers ingrained from a very young age, and expectations. You know, you got 9 out of 10 on that test. Why didn't you get 10?
Yeah.
You
know? And then it's like, okay, I didn't get perfect, and then mom and dad retracted their love. That must mean I'm not lovable.
That's right. Always looking out there for that love, and that goes right back to our parents. And we behave in order to receive that love from another person, rather than nurture the love within ourselves. And this is what the real journey is about. Is kind of letting go of, you know, who loves me out there. I don't need all these people to love me. I need to learn to truly accept and love myself.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've been taught this through movies and, you know, every
movies, religion.
It's just it's ingrained in society. So it's a lot to get over.
It is. It is. And it reminds me of a couple things. I mean, first of all, just the whole like power versus force concept, right? David Hawkins, and how you know, shame and guilt are the lowest vibrations, right? The lowest energy levels.
Yes.
They just keep you locked in those addictive patterns, right? They don't serve us. It's the most disempowering, right, to be in that state. And it also reminds me of the way that I heard of the African bush people, essentially the eldest continual human culture on the planet that hasn't changed much, right? They still live in hunter-gatherer sort of communal setting. And in that culture, it was so interesting because all the parents are required to do is love their children. all the discipline, all the teaching, all that comes from aunts, uncles, grandmother, grandfather, brother,
Elders,
sister,
yes.
the whole community.
The whole community,
right?
yes.
But mom and dad are just a source of love,
Yeah.
just a source of support, which I thought was so beautiful.
Profound.
Yeah, it's like they had it figured out.
Yeah.
It's been figured out, right?
Yeah.
And what a difference that would make, right? Because so many of us spend our entire lives, we pursue these careers, we pursue these, giant accomplishments. We want to build empires for our family's sake, in a large sense, right?
Mhm.
To get that approval, to get that acceptance, to get that love. And what a simpler way to be, what a more, whole and human way to be, right? To have that from the foundation,
Mhm.
always present, right? That you as an individual are always loved, always accepted. Sure, there's things you can learn along the way, and you develop and grow and so forth.
Mhm.
But your value, your worth as a human is fundamental, right? Is undeniable. Instead of having to try and lose that and trying to work for it, and it's this whole
Things are pretty messed
work
up.
ethic.
Things are pretty
Yeah,
messed up.
it gets really confusing and dark and.
So one thing that pops up for me here, and this whole idea of self-love, and it seems to be a complicated subject, and
Keep speaking.
and there's lots of wonderful teachers who teach about self-love. Teal Swan comes to mind. But people think it's this great big monumental thing, but it doesn't have to be. It's like the whole idea is I've never learned to teach myself self-love. And that could be as simple as the choices that I make with what I eat, for instance. And, do I choose the Mars bar or do I choose the apple? And what would love choose? Simple things. And I teach myself to love myself through all of my choices.
Self-love.
Self-love, very important.
And I find that with my own work, right, for myself during my healing journey, and then working with clients, it's so much about that, right? Because people know intellectually what the right choice is most times, right, between the Mars bar or the apple, or between staying up and drinking or going to sleep and having a good rest. But if you don't care about yourself, then you're not going to make that choice.
Yes.
Right? So much about nutrition and healing in general is that's the foundational piece, right?
Well, the other thing is the semantics. I know, but you say making the right choice.
Well, not the right choice,
it's a loving choice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And that's
Right, our morals.
what would love choose in any circumstance, not just the Mars bar, but what would love choose in this relationship or in being abused and so on. Do I have healthy boundaries where I actually love myself enough that I can walk away from it, rather than just kind of stay tangled in it because I need this love from this other person, abusive as it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's always about what would love do, what would love for myself do, what would love choose for me.
I like that.
Yeah, but it's a journey, and given that we've been fed so much crap around it all, we need to unlearn that and then feed ourselves with love.
Yeah.
And the results are profound. They really are. It's coming alive.
Yeah, and it transcends all the stories and all of the dogma, all of the past, whatever, right?
Yeah.
It really, it really brings a practicality to the whole idea that love is all there is, right? Or that love is the solution for all of our ails, right? And not always. There's different kinds of love by all means. I find even the word, because language is so tricky sometimes.
It is. Yeah, the word love is loaded.
And English is not the best language in general. Right, so it's not just sappy romantic love, but it's hard love, and it's discerning love, and
sometimes hard choices love. And it's like, oh my God, I got to let this relationship go, and I'm going to be all lonely, and it's going to feel awful for a while.
But
it's
necessary for the bigger picture.
That is the true growth in learning self-love. Yes.
Well, I think there's a direct correlation here, right, between the lack of initiation from childhood to adulthood and this lack of self-love. In a sense, because to choose to initiate a child, and whether you're I mean, there's cultures across the world that have different ways of doing this, but you are essentially killing that child, right? And for the mothers of these children, you've ever seen a video of them, taking the kids off to their rite of passage? Those mothers are freaking out, right? Because that's their baby. You're taking my baby. They're freaking out. They're hitting the medicine people. They're attacking. They're like screaming, crying, bawling their eyes out. They're grieving the loss of this child.
Yes.
Because they are losing this child.
Right.
But they know that it's necessary, right? And it's out of love that they allow that to happen, because they know for the survival of their culture, for the survival of their community, they need to take these children and put them through this process to create a healthy human adult.
Yes.
Right? Something we don't have a lot of in our culture, right? True adults. I was talking with someone earlier today, and it's like, we have a lot of grown-up kids, right? That like to scream and put up a tantrum and, play the victim, and it's few and far between where you meet someone who really holds that, maturity and that wisdom and that experience, that then can inform, what does it mean to be a healthy human, and what does it mean to have true culture, right? And a sense of like ancestry that goes beyond, you and I, but looking forward a few generations, right? What kind of world are we leaving for the unborn?
Good question these days.
Yeah. Yeah, one that I think, one of my most informative or impactful teachers as of late, a guy named Stephen Jenkinson. And I believe I shared a little bit about this with you just in our calls and so forth, but Stephen Jenkinson, I can't recommend his stuff enough. And, he talks about just the emptiness of these times, right? And how if you can make your life, right, live the question and you'll find the answer, right? So if you can live the question of what am I leaving for future generations, you'll find something worthwhile, right? But you got to first take the time to really sit with that and really feel into that and see, okay, what's going to be there, right? And how can I, in whatever small or big way, play a role?
Well, more and more we're getting the indigenous cultures coming back and rising up, like the pipeline incidents in Dakota and all of that sort of thing. And there were indigenous peoples from all over the world gathered to stand together against that. And it's this is we're starting to get heard. And the corporatocracy's days remembered.
Yeah. Like the veil's been pierced, right? The veil's been pierced, it's falling away.
Yeah, and there's truth coming out all over the world about, everything. Everything is getting exposed so it can be swept away so that we can really step back into, who we're supposed to be as a human race.
Yeah, a bit of a clean slate.
Yeah, clean slate. Totally.
I'm finding, and in our discussion, we had mentioned that, cryptocurrency is one of these things, right? One of these tools, one of these developments that is sort of leveling the playing field, in a sense.
It's kind of a silent revolution. It's a bloodless revolution. And it's the more I've delved into cryptocurrencies for a few months now, and I've studied them, I've invested in them, and I've turned them upside down and looked at them, and I also look at a lot at world politics and the financial system and so on and so forth. And a lot of people don't even have an awareness of where the financial system is, how it works, how corrupt it is, going right back to the early 1900s. I mean, my parents grew up with a financial system that they didn't question. And so, of course, why would we? But once you actually understand how it's been conjured up and so on and so forth, the point being that the fiat system, or the monetary system as it exists now, is due to collapse. And there have been 600 fiat currencies in the world, more than 600 that have come and gone. And so, there's the point is that the dollar in your hand, this fiat currency, what does that really represent when you stop and think about it?
Yeah.
It's a piece of paper, it's not gold backed, it's not backed by anything, it's really, if I have money in the bank, it's just a bunch of digits
Yeah.
sitting on a computer that is controlled by, you know, the banksters.
Yeah.
Basically, pardon the term.
Yeah. No,
But this is the truth. So given that this system is like the typical fiat currency system lasts 35 years. The US dollar is over 40 years since they took it off the gold backing. It is way overdue to crash, and there's lots of things happening all over the world, and we'll go into details. But what do you do when the fiat system crashes? So the whole idea of cryptocurrencies is it gives us an option to head into a decentralized system that is controlled by you and I, verified by what they call the blockchain, which is a series of 6,000 computers all over the world verifying transactions. So in other words, I can you want to sell your bicycle, I electronically send you a portion of a Bitcoin or an Ethereum or whatever cryptocurrency I'm using. You take that into your electronic wallet and you give me the bicycle. Very simple. People sending money, for instance, from banks to, I have a guy in East Front and he sends money back home, to his family there and so on and so forth. But sometimes these transactions going through the banks and the SWIFT system and all of that bureaucracy can take weeks. With this system here, I can, take my Bitcoin or my Ethereum and send it to my brother in India, whatever, bingo, bango, bongo, it's there. You don't need middlemen. We do not need these institutions to control everything. Bitcoin is a very unique, most people don't think, well, Bitcoin is just electronic currency, but so is what we have now, except that all we have now is debt. Every country, every municipality, every city is just trillions of dollars in debt. All there is debt anymore. And so the interesting thing with Bitcoin, for instance, as opposed to the fiat currency system that exists now, with the dollars, we're talking about the US mainly, but it's typical of most countries, they can keep on printing money into oblivion.
Yeah.
Just that all they do is click the digits and away it goes. And the trouble is every time they do QE1, which is quantitative easing, all it is money printing, QE2, QE3. Now you have this volume of money, and what that does effectively is take away what your actual dollar is worth. So it is just basically stealing away from, anyway, it's hyperinflation and so on.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, there will only ever be 22 million, they call it mined or produced or created, which will happen probably somewhere in 2120 or 2140 or something. But so the point is that there's a cap on the volume of Bitcoin ever to be produced, which is a huge advantage, as opposed to a fiat currency that can be printed into oblivion like it was in Weimar, Germany. Now you need your wheelbarrow full of dollars to buy a loaf of bread. What's happening in Venezuela right now, the 1,600% inflation, and people think it can't happen here. People need to wake up to this.
Yeah.
There's wonderful information, great videos on this, education. But the beautiful thing about cryptocurrencies is it's the soft landing when the fiat, the current typical fiat system is dying. It gives us a way to take our currencies into this other place that is now controlled by us, confirmed on the blockchain. And actually, the blockchain is actually being adopted, like Ethereum blockchain technology is being adopted by the banks and all kinds of institutions all over the world. This is kind of like the way the internet was when it started, and people were kind of saying, I didn't understand it, and this is going to be around, what do you do with it, and all of this. So it's very important for people to look into this, because this is happening. By next February or so, early next year, you're going to see this being used a lot. People have apps on their phones, and they'll go into a store to buy something, and they'll just pay with their portion of a Bitcoin. It's all divisible. You can break it into satoshis and increments, and it's an amazing system. The beautiful part is, because it's supported by the blockchain, that is a total verification system. I don't need my bank to verify any funds and so on and so forth. The blockchain itself, all of these computers, does it all through mathematical formulas all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this verification system is also being applied to real estate and musicians, how they get paid their royalties, and the applications
Everything.
are endless.
Yeah.
This is the Wild West, but this is the future.
Yeah.
This is really worth paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have friends that are doing it in sort of the healthcare space,
Mm-hmm.
right, for patient records and
Yeah.
like biometrics and all that sort of stuff. So it's coming
So
in a
maybe
big
it's
way.
here, yeah.
It's here, yeah, it's here, and it's only getting more and more prevalent.
The interesting thing is right now, it's taken kind of 8 years for Bitcoin, for the awareness of the average person to even know what a cryptocurrency is or Bitcoin and so on and so forth. It took 8 years.
Mm.
And right now we're at like 1.5% awareness in the world
Mm.
of people who actually know what it is. So it's taken 8 years to get there. It'll take 8 months for us to get from 1.5% to 3%. It'll take 8 weeks to go from 3% to 10%. So this will, when this catches
Exponential.
on, the adoption is just going to be astronomical. It'll just take
Mhm.
over.
Mm-hmm.
Which is beautiful. We're disempowering the banksters. This is the revolution. We don't need blood on the streets.
Yeah, and I really see it as sort of the economic arm, as it were, of what I perceive as sort of the wellness revolution,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is this getting back to health and vitality and natural principles and
Yeah.
community and all that stuff, which takes money, right? Takes resources to do all that stuff.
Yes.
And I have a lot of friends, that are more in sort of the hippie mind frame, right?
Mhm.
They're getting more and more business savvy, more entrepreneurial.
Mhm.
I think many of us are. We have to, just to survive and get
Put
through.
food in the table.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I really see this as being a big potential part of that,
Mhm.
right? To help empower these early adopters to be more, better positioned,
Yes.
in a sense, and better equipped to really make the changes happen that we want to make happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other part, the beautiful part of the revolution is like you have the corporatocracy. It's all the governments and the corporations. They're all in bed together.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you disempower Monsanto? How do you disempower these entities that are controlling the world?
Mm-hmm.
You take their funds away.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, you move your funds into cryptocurrencies, and that's decentralized. They can't get a hold of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is controlled by you and I.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of the Buckminster Fuller quote,
Mhm.
right? That rather than fight the problem, create a solution that renders the old way obsolete, right?
Yes.
Which also ties into something that I wanted to talk about, which was
buckyballs.
buckyballs and shungite.
Yes,
and,
oh man, there's so
the
much.
interesting
So
vial of liquid that you
Yeah.
got in there.
Yes. So along all of my study around nutrition and health and wellness, it just keeps on expanding and expanding. I started drinking green smoothies 8 or 10 years ago, and lost 15 pounds in 3 months just adding them to my diet. The enzymes. All of a sudden my body's getting enzymes, and I'm digesting my food properly and all this. And it just and that was before I even cut carbs out of my diet. And so it just keeps on getting better. But I discovered these things like, two things. One was Protandem, this amazing product, which is 5 herbs. And it's all scientifically proven. And what it does is actually go in and release an NRF2 factor in the cell, which goes into your genome and actually down-regulates all of your over-regulated genes and overexpressed genes, and up-regulates all the ones that are underexpressed. Basically resets your genome. At the same time, gets your cells to produce millions of enzymes per second. So it totally detoxes, resets your genome from all of these, all the toxins and so on that we ingest in food, water, the air, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then, so I thought that was fascinating. But then I recently did a lot of research on this product, on this element called shungite, which comes out of Russia. It comes out of some asteroid that hit the Earth millions of years ago, and it's the C60 carbon is the purest form of carbon, and it is unique because it's a round element. And it actually inspired Buckminster Fuller to create the geodesic dome. That's the same kind of structure. but it has amazing properties as far as detoxing goes. It absorbs heavy metals and fluorine and chloride and mercury and all of this sort of thing, and helps the body detox. The studies on it are fascinating. It's only been studied for the last 20 or so years, but they find that in parts of the world where people are living to 120, 140 years old and staying healthy, they just happen to be drinking this water that is flowing from the glacier through this shungite, and they're actually drinking it in the water. They did a rat study, which was fascinating. So they took two groups of rats, control group, and then one that they injected with shungite, I believe with olive oil, it might have been with water, I'm not sure. And so these two groups of rats, and they after 2 years, the control group of rats is dying because that's their normal lifespan. And they cut them open and kind of said, okay, what are they dying from? And it was all inflammatory diseases, the same as humans have, right? Heart disease and liver disease and all the inflammation. The other group of rats that they kept feeding the shungite to lived, I think, almost twice as long. And when they cut them open, all their organs were fine. They had no inflammation. They just died of old age, finally organ failure. And a lot of them, they killed them because they just wanted the study to be over with. They wanted to get paid for it. So who knows how long they could have lived. Yeah. So I'm paying special attention to this. One of my guru guys, who's the smartest man in the world, Cliff High, has been talking about it recently. And he's actually been taking it for 19 months in a solution of olive oil. And he has a chronic liver condition. He's 64 years old, has a chronic liver condition that he says he would have died from like this year had he not discovered this. So it's got amazing healing properties. Shungite also, here's my piece of it here.
Yeah, you can hold it up. Those watching the video. This is watching the video.
This is what it looks like. This happens to be in this particular form, but it also has amazing anti-EMF shielding capabilities. You can get it and use it in your water. If you put it in your water, pour your water in, leave it for 24 hours. It takes out the heavy metals and all of the nasties. Great way to purify water. So this is a pretty unique substance and is very special. So I continuously kind of learning more about it.
Yeah. You're the first to introduce me to the idea of actually consuming it, right? Because I was familiar with the EMF protection. I was familiar with the water filtration. Yeah. But I had never thought to actually, ingest it. Yeah. But it makes sense that it would, at the very least, be harmless. Right, because it's just carbon.
Well, the whole rat study was all about the whole focus of it. Okay, there's this stuff here. What dose is it toxic? And of course, the more they fed them, the healthier they were. And then in the second part of the study, this isn't killing them, and they started to feed them all sorts of nasty chemicals and all sorts of things apparently, which still didn't affect them. So it protects the cells. This is what life is made of. This basic carbon atom is the source of life. And there's if you go back into thousands of years old into China and these ancient cultures where there's stories of people living extreme ages. In some cultures, like in China, they didn't even consider a man to become grown up until he was 80 years old. Wow. So this whole idea of elder, I got another 11 years to go here before I can really become an elder, right? So there's a lot that we have to learn, and it's so important to just stay open-minded and just get curious about everything. This is an incredible journey. The whole journey about learning about minerals and trace elements in our diet and how we're void of them and how it's keeping us ill. That's profound. It's a very simple concept, but we're not. Almost every person is eating a North American diet, or most diets in the world are void of minerals and trace elements. Because, it's very simple, because you can only take minerals and trace elements out of the ground. The plant cannot produce them. The plant can produce lots of other things through photosynthesis and what it does, but it cannot produce minerals and trace elements. The soil that our plants are grown in has been void of trace elements for decades. There's articles going back in U.S. newspapers going back to the 1940s saying our soil is depleted.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to some of the most long-lived cultures in the world, there's actually a study done by Dr. Joel Wallach. And he kind of did a study on all of these remote cultures that were still like living a long time and stayed healthy and so on. But what they did was they cooked over an open fire and they burned wood, or whatever, and they cooked their food. What did they do with the ashes? They put it back into the soil that they grew their plants with. What are ashes? They're minerals and trace elements. So with our modern farming techniques, we use potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus to make them look wonderful, but they're really void of nutrition in this regard.
Yeah.
The quick snippet of like, so what? Is like, for instance, say take an element like iodine, that there again has to come out of the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're short of iodine, and iodine protects not just our thyroid, but all of our organs. So if we don't get enough iodine, our iodine receptor in the cell is open, right? It's just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
So what comes along to fill that void if we're not getting iodine? If you look at the periodic table, right, what's next to it? Chlorine, fluorine, and bromine. So any of those elements will come along, now fill that cell receptor, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's not functional iodine.
It's not really a very good thing at all.
No.
So given that we have like 70 or 90 essential minerals and trace elements that we should be getting, how many other receptors are open to all of the extraneous stuff that we're ingesting and breathing and so on and so forth. So how do you do that? Ideally, from my perspective, you get plant-based minerals. If you take calcium as a rock, your body's going to kind of see it as a rock probably. If you get calcium that comes out of a plant source, it sees it as food. One company the vitamins that I use are made by Longevity, and what they do is actually dig up prehistoric shale, which is the way the earth was millions of years ago, with all of its plants just kind of sitting there and all the minerals.
Decomposed,
they dig it up.
concentrated, and
it's just sitting there in a natural state, and then they leach out the minerals and then put it in the vitamin supplement. So now you're getting the complete spectrum of minerals and trace elements, the way they existed on the earth a long time ago, in a plant-based form. Now they're absorbable. And I can attest, I've been taking these vitamins for, 10 years as well. So the combination of the smoothies and the vitamins and everything else has left me pretty good, And I'm more flexible than most 25-year-olds when I fold up in yoga. And, I have good stamina and my mental acuity is there. So I'm kind of the walking proof that all of this works. And it's not just one thing, you can't do just one thing.
Yeah. No, there's no silver bullets, right? But there is a lifestyle.
Yes.
Right, and that's what it's all about, is living that, right?
Yeah.
Showing that, being that, broadcasting that energy, and then having people so, drawn to it because they're like, oh, there's something different about this Bruce character, right? And they get curious. And then you can inform them, say, yeah, I do this, I do this, I do this. And over time, we start to build that into our way of being. It becomes our new normal. The next thing you know, life is a whole lot better and more energized and more vital than it ever has been.
Well, at 69 years old, in spite of all the stuff, my wife's dementia, and she died a year ago, and all of the, the horrible things that we go through in life, my life is richer and more interesting than it's ever been. And this is amazing. I just have to pinch myself every day, kind of, shake my head. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
And quite easily attainable if we approach all of this with an element of self-love.
Yes. And openness, right?
Yeah.
Curiosity.
Curiosity. I'll get curious because everything you've taught is a lie. I know that sounds really awful and nasty and really big, but we've been mistaught many things.
Yeah.
Including, to not be curious.
And don't question, right?
Yep.
Do as you're told.
Yep.
Be a good worker.
This is the truth. You read this book, you memorize this book. This is the truth. And luckily, we're waking up to more curious people, which is great. Oh, there's so many things.
So many things.
So many things.
So many things. Which is, it's what keeps things interesting, right? It keeps us engaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's always that next thing to explore and to get to. It's like how well can we be, right? How connected can we be? How empowered can we be, right? How free can we be to create and to commune and to enjoy, right? To play. I love what Don Miguel Ruiz, the author, talks about. That and this is like Toltec wisdom, right? That we're here to play and have fun, right? We're here as primary objectives, and it's just funny that our culture seems to think play is relegated just to little kids, and you get past a certain age and suddenly you can't do that anymore, and you got to grow up and be serious and be a professional, and it's such an essential element, right? I almost see it as like another vitamin, right? We've got like all of our, nutritional things we need, but we also need things like community, right? And we need things like play, in order to really, stay learning and stay engaged and have fun, right? Keep things interesting.
But even the thing around play, and I mean that's a huge button for me, because I remember when I was a kid, it was like, oh, go play, but don't be too noisy, and don't be too long, and always control. And if you were too noisy, I'd get yelled at. So I was taught very early, it's okay to have fun, but you gotta.
Only in this
it's not
particular
really, it's not
way.
really fun,
Yeah.
When I go to ecstatic dance now, that's fun.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm at my age, I'm learning to have fun. Isn't that sad?
Sad and beautiful.
Sad and beautiful.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's exactly because it's like, how many of us were actually allowed to explore without boundaries,
Yes.
right? Not to say that you should be like unsafe or dangerous, right? But to have that freedom, right? To really push the envelope and and express, right? Self-expression and being fully expressed is something that I'm finding is another of these essential factors, right? Because we all have something to share. We all have something to give or to create.
Honoring our gifts. Yes.
Yeah, and
Honoring
putting that out,
gifts.
right? Putting that out, and being of service in that way, right? In whatever way that is. And yeah, finding the safety or the permission, right? To really let loose.
Yes.
To really let loose.
Let me out.
Yeah, yeah, to really be seen, right? And it's funny because it's like the things we all want the most and need the most, to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be accepted, these fundamental human needs are often the thing we're most afraid to really be vulnerable into, right? To really soften into, to open up into, because there's a bit of risk, right? There's always a risk. But when you actually do open up, and you actually do, and in the right space, with the right people, right, in the right context, then you're met with this beautiful sort of reflection of like, oh, I see you, because I know what it's like to be there, and I can honor that, and I can appreciate, what it is you're sharing.
This is where we truly connect, is in the state where I can truly share with you my vulnerability and my pain and all of it, and know that that's in a safe space. This is true connection. And, I've known people for a long time, and I don't really get to know them until they go through some crisis and they say, I need to start cry on somebody's shoulder. I need to let this out, and then we start to connect. Otherwise we're just kind of going along. I'm fine.
Yeah.
There's a an acronym for fine too.
Well, I think it's fearful, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, or exhausted or something.
It's a great acronym anyway.
Yeah.
Fine is nonsense. So it's And, you know, we still need to go out and function in our jobs and deal with people and customers and all whatever we do in life. And there we need our healthy boundaries, you know,
Yep.
and a little bit of a face, that's absolutely fine.
Yep.
But to having people in our lives that we can truly open up and connect with, that's where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, and that's where I see one of the sort of overarching themes of this podcast, right? This whole mission that I'm on is to help birth a global tribe, right? Of people like us that can speak this language and that can open up and that can let loose and love ourselves and love each other. And it's when you find your people, right? You find those communities, you find those pockets, you find those gatherings, right? Of people that are your tribe or your, you know, like-minded, like-hearted people.
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the most important things we can do, right? At this point in time, especially as the intensity gets cranked up on planetary evolution. You know, we need each other. Right? We really need each other.
It's time. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it.
No.
We could talk for hours.
Well, yeah.
And we have
Well,
at times.
Yeah,
But
we're probably going on quite a while.
I'll begin to wrap up here
Yeah.
with a couple questions I'd like to close with.
Sure.
Number one, you know, our culture talks a lot about, you know, what's the next thing, what's the next thing to buy, what's the next thing to do, addition. I like to ask people, what's one thing you are either currently or recently have let go of?
Are you talking with physical
In any
items?
context you like.
Letting go, oh boy.
Any context you like.
I'm letting go of the idea that I was educated by the system, and I am embracing my curiosity and the non-mainstream stuff. You know, my awareness around kind of waking up to the world is waking up to the corporatocracy and how controlled the media is, the mainstream media. The beautiful part now is we have this internet with so many beautiful, genuine resources that we can truly research and find out what's going on. And there again, through that medium, we're disempowering the people who are trying to control us, which is wonderful. And waking up to the fact that we're that controlled. It's a pretty big issue.
It's a big pill to swallow, right?
It's better little bits, little pills at a time. Because
Yeah.
it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. When you actually start to look at it all, it's pretty, it can be pretty scary at first.
Yeah.
But without that knowledge, you know, it's like we can't kind of say, okay, I see that and I'm choosing something else. You know, and then see what else is available for us to truly educate ourselves. Learn to trust in our intuition and our own intelligence and our, you know, our own knowing and all of it. You know, to become empowered completely.
Yeah, that
So-
inner knowing and intuition. It's something I've been working with a lot lately. Is like, because I'm a very sensitive individual, but I can also be very calloused and very cold and very disconnected, right? But if I really take the time to slow down and breathe and feel, my body tells me, right? My body, my heart tells me
Learning
what.
to listen to this, yes.
Yeah.
So we're all very intuitive, but we've been kind of dumbed down, you know, because
Yeah.
we let the kind of head get in the way too much. A
Precisely.
little too much thinking and not enough meditative heart work.
Yep. Yep. It's all part of the process. The reawakening of the heart's wisdom. Yeah. Okay, I love it. I love it. And then another question I'd like to wrap with is, and I mean, we've already touched on a bunch of these things, but 3 resources or teachers or teachings that have either been very like impactful along your own journey, or that, you know, you would recommend to folks, you know, people who have listened through to this, that are interested in these concepts, you know, 3 things you could sort of direct people towards for further study, immersion, and so forth.
So I was when I was going through, you know, the rough stuff with the family and so on, I was really going through my rough stuff, and I was looking for some sort of a support, or some sort of a meaning to all of this, or what's it all about. Wayne Dyer was a huge influence. He's a wonderful teacher. Eckhart Tolle, certainly about presence and really, he's a profound teacher. Interestingly enough, Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God was an amazing series, an amazing book. Because for me, I grew up in a very kind of religious atmosphere. My father was always involved with the church, and I was the choir master's son, so I was always involved in it, in the Baptist church and the Anglican church, and all very confusing. I never related to it. But what Neil Donald Walsh through this book offered me was I can separate out religion and spirituality. Right? I don't need to kind of give up on my spirituality and flush it down the toilet of the church. This can be a separate entity. It's non-denominational. It just becomes a spiritual journey then that isn't really attached to any organization. So that was very freeing. Along the way, Teal Swan is an amazing teacher. She's profound. She's got YouTube videos on just about every subject, and she's been an incredible influence. And people like this, I look at what have they been through. And Teal Swan came out of the ashes of a horrible existence to become this very spiritual teacher, and she's a very good teacher. Yes. But everyone really, Teal Swan may speak to me right now. She doesn't next year. To one person you resonate. You need to kind of see what pops up. I used to walk into chapters, and that was the time I was driving off from the country to my new career, and I had lots of time in the car to listen to books on disc. And I'd just go in there and I'd just go to the shelf, and there'd be one that just, that's it. Just pay attention. It's like I walk through life now letting go of my mind, trying to figure out where I should be and to figure it all out. Let go of that and kind of say, okay, universe, just help me to recognize the next person who's going to come into my path that I'm supposed to pay attention to, the next book that, jumps off the shelf, the next situation, and because it's like giving up on kind of thinking that I know where I'm supposed to be going, and really opening up to what is my path and getting curious about it and open up to it. That's really what it's all about. So everybody should just really pay attention to what speaks to them. Pay attention to what resonates.
Yeah, that inner guidance.
And life becomes way more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. A lot easier in a sense, right?
Yeah,
It's a struggle.
Yeah, it's letting go of trying to control. Letting the thinking control.
Yeah, or thinking that your thinking can
control, yes.
Right? That whole illusion.
And kind of giving it up to a higher power, the universe, call it whatever you will. It becomes a very, it's a richer journey.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay, my brother.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. And I just want to take a second to just acknowledge you, right? For the man you are, the friend you've been, the teacher you are, this curious, playful force moving through the world, shaking it up, keeping things interesting. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you over these past years and spend more time. And I look forward to many more.
Well, thank you for your presence in my life, and you made a profound difference to me, and encouraged me to kind of actually end up in a place where I'm doing my first podcast. This is it's kind of one thing to have all of this, whatever it is I have, and it's another thing to want to get it out there. How do I do that? So thank you for this opportunity to express myself. I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And thank you for watching or listening. You'll be able to find all of the show notes for this episode over at bryanhardy.ca/Bruce, where I'll have links to books we mentioned, websites, some of the crypto stuff, all the stuff we mentioned will be linked up there. And what else? I think that's about...
Okay, so the other thing I'd like to mention is that I'm at a stage in my life where I've accumulated a lot of knowledge and so on, mostly through my graduation from the University of YouTube. And it's like I'm self-educated, but there's a lot of really cool stuff I picked up along the way. So I would love to have a venue to share more of this. I would do kind of life coaching one-on-one, dietary issues, all of that sort of thing.
Stuff you've already done in the
The
past.
stuff I've done in the past, but
Yeah.
I would love to open the door to more of that. So if there's anyone out there who is interested, please include my contact information.
Well, and so what's the best way? I know you're on Facebook.
Bruce Bray on Facebook is perfect, or
Yeah.
you
Want to
put
give an email address?
my email address on there is colinbray@rogers.com. You can include
Okay.
that in your
In the notes?
in the notes would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah, no,
let's see what the universe lands in front of me.
Yeah. We'll have to see something beautiful, I imagine. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I believe there's some pie and some coconut.
No, what we're having was actually what we're having for dessert. We had the main course, which was
Yeah.
wonderful. We had some wild edibles and green smoothie from heaven.
Yep.
And so for dessert, I made up a rhubarb strawberry kind of a mixture, and we're going to have coconut yogurt on top of that, which I make.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Okay, we have to get busy enjoying that dessert.
Mhm.
Thank you for listening, and keep redefining reality. Peace. Oh, good stuff.
Yay.
I popped your podcast cherry.
Thank you. We truly do appreciate this.
The first of many, man.